Hi again, everyone. Just to recap, my name is Mathilde, and I'm in charge of marketing here at Amity. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited about the topic, strategies for scaling customer success. We're very lucky to have our CEO, Philp, with us today, who knows a lot about the topic. So just before we start, a couple of housekeeping. Just if you want to join the conversation at any time, please do. We're using the hashtag CSWebinar, and feel free to tag us using @GetAmity or @PaulPhilip. And if you look at the bottom left corner of your screen, you will see a chat box. At any time, feel free to put your questions in there. And at the end of the session, we'll come back and Paul will answer the questions. So yeah, without further ado.
Great, thanks Mathilde for that introduction, and thanks everyone for coming out on this fall afternoon. We're excited about this topic and looking forward to having a good conversation about it. As Mathilde said, you can ask questions. Okay, so we'll get started. So the two pictures you're looking at here are of the construction processes of the London Underground, and we have a London Underground theme today. And it just struck me when I put them next to each other that one on the left was a really good depiction of an unscalable process. It took a very, very long time to dig very, very short subway lines with that particular way of digging out the tunnels. And it's very manual and very time consuming. And of course, on the right you can see what the scalable solution for that would look like. You've got 3 people walking behind the tunnel digger that's just ripping through the rocks. So there's a machine doing a lot of the work, and people doing the strategy and the guidance. That was a good image of scalable and unscalable. Okay. So before we talk about scaling your customer success department and your customer success processes, let's talk a little bit about how they got into the whatever condition that you find them in today. And typically, and at this point, we've spoken with, worked with, interviewed probably 500 to 700 customer success organizations, and it's pretty much the same picture everywhere. Is the customer success processes just evolved, and so another image of the London Underground subway. This is the actual geographically accurate depiction of the subway, and it's a lot messier when you look at it in reality than those beautiful graphics that are abstractions. And the London subway looks this way and operates this way because it just evolved over time. It started in the late 1800s and just evolved over time. And if you get a photographic image, you would be able to see lots of dead ends and old stations and routes that don't go anywhere, and it just evolved that way, and that's how early stage customer success processes look. You just solve the problem in front of you, then the next problem, and the next problem, and then you end up with something that solves a lot of problems, but is perhaps a manual process, ad hoc, which means that one customer success manager's onboarding process may not be exactly the same as another customer success manager's onboarding process. And because it's manual and ad hoc, it's error-prone and time-consuming and ultimately unproductive. So that's how we got where we are today. And so let's talk about how we put the foundations in place for scalable customer success. And there's really 3 categories that we have to focus on. And the first is define processes, defining your key customer success processes, customer visibility. This is really striving towards no surprises. This is having an early warning system that lets you know when a customer is at risk or is having a challenge. This might be having up-to-date and fresh customer data about the outcomes that they're producing. There's a lot of different ways that you can get better customer visibility. And then the third leg of the scalability stool is effective automation. And those 3 things go together. And we always recommend that when moving towards scalability, when moving towards improving your processes, that you start small and iterate. You learn a lot through the process, and where you think that you're going to go now might be very different. You might think very differently in 6 months, and you don't want to have to redo a lot of work. So we think it's always the most effective to start small and iterate. Okay, so what are the 10 strategies for scaling customer success? One is define customer success. Absolutely critical. In the early stages, this can be a bit ad hoc, but as you start to scale, it can't be ad hoc anymore, and the company has to have a definition of what customer success is in our organization, where it begins and where it ends. Segment your customers. Segmentation is just the foundation, is the cornerstone of a lot of the things that are going to come up. And the next item is understanding your customer journey. And if you've got different customer segments, you're going to have different customer journeys. And so the sooner you segment your customers, the sooner you can understand your customer journey. And then define your core processes. Data management, that can be surprising for a lot of people, and we'll talk a little bit about data management. Identifying warning and opportunity signals, prioritization, specialization, automation, and then, of course, defining the KPIs that you're going to manage by and the goals that you're going to set. Okay, so let's dive down into each one of them. So by defining customer success, what I mean is defining the mandate of customer success. Where does customer success in your organization begin, and where does it end? What are its accountabilities? What are its contributions to the business? What are other parts of the company depending on customer success for? Are you doing onboarding? Are you doing adoption? Are you doing renewals? Are you doing expansion? Are you doing cloud conversions? What is the role of customer success? Really critical to get that right. To get that defined and agreed upon. Without an agreed upon mandate, it's really hard to standardize your processes. It's really hard to automate. And so that's really job one. Related to job one, but really important, is what's the relationship between customer success and sales, and how is the handoff managed when a SaaS business is small? There's 1 or 2 salespeople and a couple of customer success managers. all of that can be managed informally. But if you've got 20 salespeople and 10 customer success managers, you can't manage that informally anymore. So you have to define the handoff process. When does sales stop? How does customer success pick up from there? And then if sales is going to have an account management role, how does that fit in with customer success? What does customer success do? What does account management do? Especially when it comes to renewals and expansion. And then contracts, if there's contracts at renewal time and expansion time, who's going to manage that? And then another really important relationship to get defined at the beginning is the relationship between customer success and technical support. And as you can see by the question there, are the CSMs reacting to tickets and inbound questions by email from customers? Or are they going to customer support? And what's the interaction between technical support and customer success management? And if you're going to have a reactive element to a CSM's responsibilities, that's going to have an impact on their ability to be proactive. And it's just good as you start to scale to clarify those relationships. And typically in the early days, you don't have to clarify those relationships. You kind of make it up as you go, but as you scale, that's not going to work as much. Okay, so segment your customers. And why this is so critical for the customer success team is because when you segment your customers, you do it because they're going to have a different customer success strategy. So in segment one, that might be your enterprise customers. So they're going to have a very high touch, lots of time, lots of interaction with the customer, and so that's going to be your customer success strategy there. And then in segment 2 and 3, that might be your corporate market, your corporate customers. There might be moderate touch. They don't get as much attention as the enterprise customers. And then you might have 2 different industries that you serve, and each industry might require a different knowledge base and modified customer success strategies. So when we say segment your customers, we're not talking about the way sales or marketing or finance might segment the customers. We're talking about how the customer success organization segments the customers along lines where there's a different customer success strategy required for different groups of customers. Okay, great. Okay, so the next, after you've segmented your customer, and by the way, whenever there's a 1 to 10 list, it sounds like these should all be done in order. That's not what we're recommending today. Although there is a natural flow to the strategies, in reality, you'll be doing pieces of one and pieces of another at the same time, and you might ignore a strategy and pick it up later. Okay, so understand your customer journey, and if you've been on one of our webinars where we've talked about the customer journey in the past, you know that we consider this really critical for customer success to really be able to manage the customer relationship and the customer's actual success. And we define the customer journey in terms of the outcomes that the customer wants to produce. And so what matters to the customer, what are the outcomes I'm going to produce in the beginning? What are the outcomes I'm going to produce as we ramp up? And where am I going to plateau with those outcomes. We're HubSpot customers, and when we implemented HubSpot, we were interested in improving the visitors to our website and the number of leads that we generate, and that's how we understood our journey of adopting HubSpot at Amity. So the customer has an outcome-driven view of the journey, but internally, you're going to have different internal processes for supporting the customer through that phase: onboarding, adoption, success reviews, renewals, expansion. But the customer doesn't think of it that way. Those are your internal business processes, and those are critical, and you have to have them. But that's your process. The customer doesn't think of it that way. The customer thinks of it in terms of the outcomes that they're going to produce. Okay. So understanding your customer journey by the outcomes that they focus on is critical for scaling. Okay, so once you've identified the customer journey, then you can start defining the core processes that you're going to put in place to support the customer through that journey. And this list here, when we say define your core processes, we mean write it down. But we don't mean get a great big binder and put a 100-page documentation about your onboarding and training process. What we usually mean is a 10-point PowerPoint slide, or a 4-page Google Doc, or 100 cells in a Google Sheet or an Excel document. It doesn't have to be huge, and it doesn't have to be formal, but it does have to be written down so that everybody will have the same understanding of what the core processes are and how they work and how they fit together. And standardizing the processes in this way, really helps with employee onboarding times. As you scale, as you're growing out your customer success team, you're going to want to bring those employees on board and up to speed as quickly as you can. Things are likely going to be moving quickly, and so having a defined set of core processes really helps the new people understand how everything works and what they're expected to do. And you're not going to define all of the processes on the right, and you may have other processes in your business that aren't on this list, but you'll probably start with a set of 2 or 3 core processes and get them documented and agreed upon by your team. Okay, so strategy number 5 is data management. And when I say data management, I'm not talking about the kinds of bits, bytes, and wires, and gigabytes, and gigabits, and all of the stuff that a data management person in your IT team thinks about data management. What I'm talking about is the process of ensuring that you have data that you can trust, and that the data is clean and everything correlates, and then when you're making a decision on that data, that the data that you have is right. And we've implemented close to 100 customers at Amity, and almost all of them have some level of unreliability in the data when we get started, and and until that's resolved, nothing else can move forward, because you're going to depend on that data for making decisions and for prioritizing customers. So it's really important that somebody in the customer success organization is working with whoever is getting you your data, to making so that you can trust that data. And you can't just trust it raw coming from your sales ops people and your IT people. You need to really make sure that it's giving you an accurate picture. Okay, so once you have data that you can trust and it's reliable, the next thing you want to do with that data is identify warning signals and opportunity signals. And those signals can come from all sorts of different sources. A great source of signals about your customers is their outcomes. Are their outcomes going up? Are their outcomes meeting their goals, not meeting their goals? Are they trending higher? Are they trending lower? All of those kind of questions can give you a real insight into the status of your customer. And you can have adoption insights, adoption signals, delivery and operational signals like onboarding being on time, customer feedback like an NPS score or a CSAT score, relationship signals, if the champion left or an executive left the organization, that's an important signal to pick up. But when you're thinking about what kind of signals do you need to get from that data, the place to start thinking about it is what kind of corrective actions would you like to be able to take? And, for example, if a customer decides not to renew because they weren't using the product enough, it would have been great to know that 90 days out. And so if a customer is 90 days away from renewing and their adoption is starting to decline in some way, you want to make an intervention. You want to take a corrective action, and then you want to design a signal that's going to tell you that that's the case. A signal without a follow-on action is really just a piece of information. It's really the action that matters. So we always recommend our customers start from the action back, and then you can do this calculation in your BI system. You can do this calculation in Excel or Google Sheets, and you can do these calculations in a number of different customer success platforms that specialize in this, and that's what Amity does. Okay, so we've identified warning signals and opportunities. The next thing to sort out is prioritization. And what I mean by prioritization is putting things in place so that you're focusing on the right customer at the right time. In the previous example, if you come in the morning and one of your customers has the condition of declining adoption and renewing in 90 days, and they're a good-sized customer, you probably want to put them near the top of your attention list. And so once you have the data, once you have those signals, those early warnings, using them to prioritize where you focus your attention, because that's really your most important piece of leverage to improve productivity, is deciding where you're going to focus and where you're not going to focus. So putting rules in place or processes in place so that you're always focusing on the right customer at the right time. And this can be done manually. It can be done automatically using the signals previously. But this is really a high impact item for scalability and reducing the overall cost of customer success, and it's improving its overall performance is focusing on the right customer at the right time. Something we highly recommend. Okay, so once you've got a plan in place for prioritization, then as you start to scale, the team will very likely start to specialize. And there's a number of different ways that you can specialize, but in the early days, everybody does everything. And there's a lot of firefighting, and hey, I'm free, I'm going to take the next problem, or I'm going to work on everything with all of my customers. And that works when the volume of customers is small, but as that volume increases, as you scale, it becomes chaotic and unmanageable. And it's at that point that customer success teams tend to specialize. There's a lot of different ways that you can specialize. One is a functional split, that somebody does onboarding, a team does onboarding, a team does adoption management, coaching the customers, and another team does expansion management. You can specialize by industry if there's different domain knowledge that you need, and that impacts how you coach the customers. We've seen all sorts of different ways of specializing, but specializing really gets rid of the chaos of everybody doing everything, and is another high leverage way of improving the customer success performance. Okay, the next level, the next strategy is automation. And it might seem like automation might be the first thing that you want to put in place, but we recommend that it comes a bit later after you put some of the other strategies in place. For example, you'll want really clear signals that you're going to use as triggers for your automation. So you're not going to want to put a lot of automation in place until you're really clear on what the signals are and what the corrective action that you want to take when you get that signal. And so, a classic example of a signal is that when a customer is in their first 30 days and they haven't logged in for 7 days, you might want to send them an email to help them get a deeper understanding of how to work with your product. That's a classic example, but there are tons of signals that companies use to trigger off their automation. And a few examples of automated actions: rule-based customer emails, notifications. Internal notifications are really very powerful. If in the case of a customer who is 90 days out and declining adoption, the CSM might want to get an email about that, and the VP of Customer Success might want to get an email about that, because here's an account that you want to put on a watch list. You might want to kick off a process, for example, kicking off the onboarding process when the account goes to closed won in your CRM system. And another thing that you might want to automate is task assignment. So when a certain condition is true, you might not want to kick off a complete process, but you might want to assign a task to the CSM to resolve that condition, or to follow up with the customer on that item. So those are 4 examples of automations that you can put in place based on your signals. Okay, and then the final strategy is to define the KPIs that you're going to use to measure the performance and the effectiveness of the changes that you're making in the customer success processes and practices. And I promise that some of the things that you put in place are going to work great. And I also promise that some of the things that you put in place aren't going to work as well as you expected. And so you want to work iteratively and keep doing more of what works and keep doing less of what doesn't work. And use your KPIs and goals to guide your determination of which changes are working and which changes aren't working. There's a lot of different types of goals that a customer success team can use to manage the effectiveness of the changes in process. Some obvious ones are conversion rate, onboarding success rate, adoption rate, churn rate, expansion rate, overall health of the customer portfolio, or overall health of my particular portfolio, and also the levels of customer outcomes. Are your customers getting better results with the changes that you've made? Always a good question to ask. Okay, so those are the 10 strategies for scaling customer success. Quick review. Defining what customer success means in your organization. Being loosey-goosey doesn't work when you're scaling. Segment your customers. Understand each segment's customer journey. Write down in a simple form but a complete form how your core processes work. Have someone who works with the data so that you know that you can trust the data and the signals that you're getting. Then identify the signals, and it can be, if you have the data, going back over the last 6 months and seeing what you could have, what signals might have been possible on a churn account, what signals might have been possible on an upsell account. Prioritization, this is a high leverage one. This really has a big impact on your ability to scale. Working with the right customer at the right time, absolutely critical. Specialization just becomes essential. You have to do it at some point. Automation leaves you and your team with more time to spend with your customers. So you want to take the day-to-day grind and automate it so that you can spend your time focusing on creating value for your customers. And then wrapping it all up, defining the key metrics, the KPIs that you're going to use to measure the impact of the changes you're making on your customer success processes, and so that you can keep the ones that are working and take out of practice the ones that aren't producing results. Okay, so those are the 10 strategies for scaling customer success. We're going to go into a Q&A session now, so this is your time to ask any questions you have about any topic from today, and I'll try to answer them. But so please enter your questions, and then we'll come back and answer them. And I just want to let everyone know who Amity is. Amity is the open customer success platform. That means that we do really well working with your data and processing your data the way that you want and the signals that you want to get. Because our philosophy at Amity is your customer success platform should fit into your business. Your business shouldn't have to fit into your customer success platform. And we take pre-Amity command centers that look like this, and we fully automate it and fully digitize it. And one way of thinking about it is we corral this mess of data on the left that every SaaS company has, so that you can focus on retention and upselling and referrals and scaling and growth, all the things that matter to your SaaS business. And there's five things that Amity does. Data integration. So we have 25 data integrations today. We can work with all of our customers' data. We wrangle that data, and then we find the needle in the haystack, the customer insights, the health scores, the trends that tell you what's important about what's happening in your customer. And then that feeds into our workflow automation, where you can have standardized playbooks and standardized rules for automating key elements of your process. And then lifecycle management lets you manage each stage of your customer lifecycle, and then reporting so that you can see how you're doing and tell the rest of the company how you're doing. So those are the 5 key elements of the Amity product. If you'd like to talk to us about how a customer success platform like Amity can help you implement these strategies for scaling, just drop us an email from our website, and we'll have one of our specialists reach out to you. And we're looking forward to doing that. Okay, so that's the message from our sponsor. And all right, so just go to getamity.com and request a demo if you'd like to find out more. Okay, so let's answer your. Okay, so the first question is, we are currently in the process of stepping up our customer success game. Awesome. We need to cross-pollinate knowledge, but we have some team members who don't think it is possible to articulate what they do day to day. Any suggestions? Yeah, well, it is possible to articulate it, so there's a few ways you can get an understanding of that. Interviewing them is the best way of doing it, where do you start your day? What do you do next? What do you do when this happens? Interviewing a professional is the best way of helping them articulate what they do, because not everybody is really good at abstracting out what they do on a day-to-day basis. And it's like a fish to water; they can't see the water. And so interviewing them and prompting them can be a powerful way to do that. Okay. Whiteboarding is another technique. Just putting some sticky notes, asking them questions, and putting sticky notes up on a whiteboard. And my experience is once someone starts to see the pattern, understand what you're getting at, it gets to be easier for them. Okay? How do you keep your CSMs from getting involved in the catch-all problems that come from an organization, such as tech support or invoice chasing? Yeah, that's a great question. That goes back to strategy number 1, defining what customer success is at your organization, and where it begins and what it's accountable for. And this is really the key point. And what's its contribution to the business? Because not everybody else in the organization is going to understand how you impact the top line and how you impact the bottom line. And so it's really important that be articulated. And then talking about some of once you have that in place, then you can assess the catch-all problems because it's very hard to do reactive customer support, technical support, and proactive customer coaching. It's very hard to do that. And then the next answer is to specialize, have technical support specialist and a customer success specialist. Okay. When you think scalability, do you think by function, by geography, or by customer segment? I don't think of any of those in particular. I think they can all be scalable, but I think the one that would drive it, from my point of view, is the customer segment, because if you're getting accelerating growth or an increasing volume of customers in a particular segment, then you're going to have the problem of scalability. So, start it out from customer growth and go from there. That would be my suggestion. Does customer success primarily relate to a SaaS business, or could be related to a perpetual license relationship? Absolutely, it can be a perpetual license relationship. We're seeing more and more on-premise and perpetual license business models adopt the customer success strategy for a couple reasons. One, competitive. The SaaS market is doing it, so the perpetual license market needs a response to their customers when they ask for it. And you're also fighting to keep those customers, and the more successful they are, the more you're going to keep them. So increasingly we're seeing customer success be critical in perpetual license businesses, and the perpetual license industry's lobbying group, the TSIA, the Technology Services Industry Association, does almost nothing but champion the cause of customer success into the on-premise and perpetual license business. Okay, can you provide me a bit more detail with regards to number 5, data management? Do you mean that the data we are currently able to gather from our clients? Yeah, so it can mean that, definitely. So if it can mean the data that you're getting from Salesforce or another CRM. It can mean the data that you're getting from the product about usage, about outcomes, and it can mean data that you're getting from a tool like Intercom that provides some customer insight, or a mix panel. And you really want to make sure that you can trust that data, and that that the data is accurate and clean, and that that it's a solid foundation for making decisions. I promise that your CRM's data isn't clean. I haven't seen a clean CRM system yet, and you just want to understand what data you're getting and that it's reliable. And that can just be as simple as going through and correlating or doing some sampling and make sure that all of the data is accurate. And another aspect of data management is getting the data that you need, and getting that on the roadmap from your product managers or your CTOs. so that you have the data and the insights that you need to be able to scale effectively. That is another element of data management. How do you keep your customers engaged throughout their customer journey? Well, I think I could probably do a couple of webinars on that question. I think we all have that question. It starts with understanding their journey, and it's like anything in life. If you want someone to engage with you, you need to be relevant and solve a problem or be interesting to the situation that they're in right now. So one of the reasons we don't like automatic emails from a drip campaign for customer success is because, on day 7, you send them the, hey, here's how you create a private dashboard. And they get that email, but they haven't figured out how to log in yet. And, that email is not going to be interesting or relevant to them. And it's just as likely going to be annoying and, be treated as spam if it doesn't come in at the time when they're having that problem. So, if you think about the customers trying to get to that next level of outcomes and what can you do to be helpful and valuable to them now and moving them forward that way. That's a general principle. There's hundreds of tactics that you can use to do that, but that's the place to stand in. Okay. For a SaaS platform, how many accounts do you think that the average CSM should manage? 47. It really depends on your business model. I actually took a slide out of the presentation that covered this topic. The general rule of thumb is $1 million to $2 million in average recurring revenue, and if your average deal size is $50 a month, that'll be a fair number of customers. And if your average deal size is $50,000 a month, it'll just be a handful of customers. But I think it's hard to have a personal relationship and keep on top of more than 50 accounts. So if you're going to manage more than 50 accounts, you're probably going to need some automation to help you with that. So I think there is a threshold around 50 where a CSM can, proactively keep on top of those customers. Okay. I just got no sound, so you probably didn't hear me say that. I apologize for that, and I hope it got resolved. Sometimes the ReadyTalk software just does that for a second. Okay, how do you proactively update the number of users as an account expands over time? We use Salesforce and really only have this number manually updated when there are more and more seats purchased. Managing this manually is bound to fail, absolutely. So God bless you if you're managing the number of users against the number of licenses manually. So getting an active user count is absolutely something that your product should be providing in terms of logins or in terms of how many times customer log in a month, so you can see who's active, and then you can use a customer success platform like Amity to analyze that. But you have to get that data from your product team and that's absolutely table stakes, and they should be providing that to you. Okay. I think we have a record number of questions today. That's awesome. Okay, so when you say specialization, do you see a scenario where multiple CSMs could be servicing a client? For example, one for training, one for farming opportunities? Absolutely. Now, if you're working with very large, high-touch accounts, absolutely, you'll have multiple CSMs working that account, and you're doing exactly what you said. And it's really important then that the customer understands who's who and what they can count on them for, and you don't want to be tripping over each other. So having a training specialist, a coaching specialist, and an expansion specialist working on the account absolutely makes sense if your accounts are large enough to support that. Okay. Or rather, how do I know when I need to hire another CSM to manage a growing customer base? Good question. There's two answers to that. There's your answer, and then there's the CFO's answer. So you'll want to hire that CSM in time for them to be up to speed to support the new customer growth. And so you'll want to know what the sales projections are, and that's definitely a way to get aligned with the customer, with the CFO. And every customer success management team should have a great relationship with the CFO. CFOs understand customer success inherently. They understand recurring revenue inherently, and so they're a good person to talk to about what the account growth is going to be and how much. And then you need to know how much time ahead of that growth do you need to onboard a new CSM so that they're effective. And then the other way of doing it is when your existing CSMs have too many customers, and that becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly because the level of attention and care that they're giving to every customer will be impacted when they have too many customers, and it's a great signal to put in place, when the amount of time spent with high-touch customers drops, because it's absolutely a symptom that tells you that you need to grow your CSM team. Okay. There's 2 more minutes left, so I'll just pick 2 last questions. Can you provide more insight, if possible, on best approaches to specialization, meaning how to choose what area to define CSRs to? By the time you're specializing, it should be pretty clear that there are certain areas that you spend a lot of time on, and like onboarding or expansion or renewal. So you definitely want to split along, the lines that are keeping your team busy, where they're spending a lot of their time, and also align it with the customer's goals. So the customer wants to be onboarded and effective quickly. That's a good justification for specializing around onboarding as one example. Okay. In a company with a separate sales team from CS, who do you think should own the account? Sales or customer success? I don't think there is a right answer. It really depends on your business model and your business strategy, but you absolutely have to sit down and negotiate it with the sales team so that everybody knows where sales end, And in some companies, sales responsibility ends when the deal when the lead opportunity goes to closed won. And sometimes there's a 30-day overlap, and then account management kicks in. But absolutely needs to be negotiated with the sales team so everybody knows who's who and where they are. So you're not tripping over each other and confusing the customer.